The silos. In his essay Building Dwelling Thinking, extracted from the poetry language thought, Martin Heidegger says, "If I take death into my life, acknowledge it, and face it squarely, I will free myself from the anxiety of death and the pettiness of life, and only then I will be free to become myself." Here Heidegger addresses the two types of attitudes towards death, the authentic and the inauthentic. The first is a form of denial to the certainty of death. However, the other is all about the essence of facing this possibility of death, and this is what he meant by "take death into my life, acknowledge it, and face it squarely." So by man accepting his end, he can become himself, and that explains the second part of the quote. By getting rid of the anxiety of death and accepting it, only then man will be able to unleash himself and be free. Death does not just affect the emotional well-being of man, but also the environment, spaces, and buildings in particular. The museum is viewed as a cemetery for valuable artwork because of the lack of freedom and the attention given to it. This is similar to Miro Rivera's Yarovi, which explores the concept of how architecture might embody ideas about death, tolerance, and reconciliation, as a reminder to everyone that death is a part of humanity, and that architecture should embrace rather than avoid it. Thus, by embracing death, mortals gain the power to grasp life's most precious endowment, freedom. I tried to embody Heidegger's quote into my rig 4 model. My trials consisted of two parts, one where the stick is cutting through the cylinder and anchorage, representing the ability to face death, and the second part where there is a ray, which is the idea of unleashing oneself to become free. I evolved my idea and used all the elements to their full potential and was keen with the detailing of the model while embodying the quote. I created strategic slits in order to fit the sticks accordingly and folds with the A7 paper in order to hold the whole model in equilibrium without the use of glue. So the paper was acting like a connector between the cylinder and the stick. My first rig N model constituted of the same conceptual ideas of that in the rig 4. Once again, I evolved my ideas towards the second trial of the rig N. I tried to capture perspective, giving the notion of an out of scale and signify space into my drawings. Once again, I evolved my drawings as such. After the blast, everything was chaotic and a disaster. However, when I looked at this picture of the silos, I felt like the unity and togetherness of the form gives us a sense of peace, where the surrounds of the silos are destroyed, but the core is preserved. So I felt like their remains give hope. I also feel like the silos acted as a shield to the whole city, Beirut. Beirut-based architect Sawai shares her report on the civil engineering details that explains the robust typology behind the monolithic structure, how it protected the western part of the city from further damage. The grain silos at the port of Beirut are considered to be a notable civil engineering work that was created under demanding conditions that has achieved high recognition for its excellent quality. My analysis constituted of the ruins that have been found and unearthed in several areas, some of which were found like the Roman Baths, that is a landscape public space that lies on the eastern slope of the Sarai Hill. In addition to the unearthing of the funerary seal and the two Ottoman docks, I focused on archaeological excavations in the Saifu neighborhood. Some 900 artifacts have already been recovered from the site. Among the finds are structures related to Roman pottery workshops, a first-century wall, well-preserved ovens for tile making, storage silos and vases for transporting oil and wine, a large pond, and a temple for the worship of Minerva and patroness of artisans. Two 19th century Ottoman docks were also unearthed during construction, just to the north of this area at archaeological sites Bay 018 and Bay 019. Excavations at Bay 039 covered 3,000 square meters and comprised the western bank of a north to south facing harbor about 300 meters from the sea. My source of inspiration was from the kerosene mule-driven vendor because of how they used to exist near the site back in the days. These pictures show the kerosene mule-driven vendor in Zaytuni Promenade in the 1960s. Kerosene is derived from distilling crude oil or petroleum. Two methods for the production of kerosene exist, both using an apparatus called alembic, which is an all-chemical still consisting of two vessels connected by a tube used for distilling. Uses of kerosene include lamps and lighting fuel, jet engine fuel, fire entertainment, and heating oil.
I evolved my rig and model. I added two big cylinders and I plugged the central part of the mechanism in between. The cylinders touching the ground and the mechanism floating in between. As the stick goes up and down, the cylinder rolls in and out, with strategic cuts made in order for the big cylinder to be able to be pulled down. I added a wall for it to be continuous with the cylinder. I made a track from sticks so when I slingshot, the small cylinder travels on the line and reaches the big cylinder like a room in the sky.